Okay, in this lesson we're going to go ahead and download and install Microsoft SQL Server 2014 Express. So I went ahead and Googled the page here, so I'll go ahead and go to that page and we'll download SQL Server 2014 Express. Now, one of the things you need to be careful of is downloading not just SQL Express, but along with the tools as well. If you just download SQL Server Express without the management tools, you'll have to download the management tools later separately, which is kind of a pain. So I'm going to go ahead and select Express and Tools, the 64-bit version of that, and select Next. And it's going to go ahead and kick off that download. And it's about 800 megabytes, so it's going to take just a few minutes to download that. So once that's downloaded, we'll go ahead and run through the rest of the install. All right, our download is completed, and now I'm going to go ahead and launch our downloaded file. And right away, Microsoft Windows complains with its typical security warning, so I'm going to say OK to let it go ahead, and it'll unpack the files, and then it'll kick off the installation script. Once the installation starts, it'll go through and ask a number of different options along the way. We'll probably take most of the default settings along the way, but there are a couple that I like to change that make it a little bit easier for a development environment. So the first window that comes up asks whether we're going to do an upgrade of an existing installation or we're going to do a new standalone installation. So I'm going to go ahead and select New Standalone Installation. And the next screen will ask to accept the terms and conditions, and I'll go ahead and do that and move on to the next screen. So in this step, it's going to check for system compatibility and see if it finds any issues. Now, one of the things you'll notice here then is the features that you want to install. And I like to go ahead and take the default of those, but if you haven't downloaded the correct version, you won't see the management tools. And it's really kind of a pain to download and install them later. So we'll see that they're here, so I'll go ahead and take the default settings of that. Also, the next screen will ask for an instance name. Unless you're on a network or a corporate network or something like that, I would go ahead and take the defaults of these as well. I've noticed in Visual Studio some of the settings, it likes to look for this default name if you're developing with SQL Express. So I recommend just leaving this alone unless you have a specific reason not to change that. The next ask for the account names and settings. I go ahead and take the default in that case as well and select Next. This is one setting I do like to change. The authentication mode. I usually select mixed mode authentication so that you can get in with Windows authentication as an administrator, and also with SQL authentication as an administrator account as well. So when you do this, it's going to ask for an additional password. And it's just a little easier in case you happen to get locked out of the server from Windows authentication, that you have a way to get in with SQL authentication as well. So I set both of those passwords, and hopefully I typed them both correct. It looks like it didn't complain. So we'll move on to the next step, and it'll run through the rest of the base installation here. So this will take a few minutes, probably 10 or 15 minutes, depending on the speed of your computer to run through. And then once that is completed, really our installation is complete. In the next lesson, I'll take you through how to start up the management console, how to run through some basic operations using the management console, how to create a database, create some tables, some fields in the tables, put some data in the tables, and also run through kind of a backup and restore operation, kind of the hello world equivalent for databases that will show you basically how to get started with this tool. So the backup and restore operation is very critical. It's probably that's why I include it in the first lesson. It's one you need to know right away, is how, particularly when you're working on software and you have the chance to really corrupt the database, it's critical to know how to back the database up and restore it to a known configuration. So kind of a lesson learned the hard way. If you don't know how to do that, it'll cause you a lot of grief while you're developing code. So we'll go ahead and let this run and finish up. All right, well, that really completes the installation process, and I'll go ahead and close down the window here, and I'll also close out this window as well. So that really completes the installation. And if you want to know that your installation has been successful, you should be able to go under the SQL Server window in the Program Start menu and launch the SQL Server 2014 Management Studio. So it may take a few minutes the first time you set this up, but if we use Windows Authentication and Connect, there we go. So we're now connected to the database and our installation is complete. So in the next section, I'll take you through the basic tour of the Management Console and how to create a database. So I'll see you in the next lesson. Thanks so much.